Imagine you're standing on a crowded street corner. People flow past you in every direction, some texting on their phones, others lost in thought, a few smiling at loved ones. There's an invisible web linking you all, something that goes beyond casual glances or shared interests. Carl Jung once said, "In all chaos there is a cosmos, in all disorder a secret order," suggesting that beneath our seemingly random experiences, something deeper organizes our reality. Welcome to today's exploration of whether the collective unconscious might be blocking us from forming genuine, heartfelt connections. I invite you to stay with me as we dissect how Jung's revolutionary concept could be influencing your relationships in ways you never imagined. And if you find this conversation resonates with you, consider subscribing to keep the insights coming. Many people assume that if we just practice better communication skills, listening actively, asking the right questions, maintaining eye contact, we'll form solid bonds. But what if there is a deeper layer at play? Jung's notion of the collective unconscious posits that we are all influenced by inherited psychological patterns, called archetypes, and by universal symbols shared across cultures and time. These hidden forces might be nudging us toward or away from deeper connection, entirely outside our awareness. Think about it. You meet someone new, you sense an instant closeness or a sudden aversion that you can't quite explain. Is it truly chemistry, or might it be something embedded in your psyche, shaped by ancestral echoes? The real question here is, are we conscious enough of these deeper undercurrents, or do they act like invisible walls between us? How often do we try to connect with someone, only to be thwarted by unspoken assumptions, collective fears, and inherited biases that are bigger than ourselves? By the end of our time together, you might discover that the way you relate to friends, partners, or colleagues has its roots not just in your personal story, but in the universal human story. Let's begin this journey and see how the collective unconscious could be the hidden key, or the hidden lock, to real, transformative connection. First, let's analyze precisely what the collective unconscious is, and why it might block real connection. Then we'll take a close look at signs that we're caught in its grip, followed by practical ways to transform this unconscious influence into a conscious, life-enhancing force. We'll also explore relatable scenarios, real-world examples, and aha moments that might change how you see your most important relationships. Ready? Let's dive in. The collective unconscious is one of Jung's central contributions to psychology. He believed that every individual psyche rests upon a deeper layer we all share, much like a coral reef that supports diverse marine life. On the surface, it might look like each fish or shell is separate, but they're all reliant on the same structure beneath them. This hidden realm contains archetypes, fundamental images and themes such as the mother, the hero, the wise old man, which shape not only our myths and fairy tales, but also our personal narratives. To understand how this could block real connection, imagine you're hosting a small gathering at home. You've got friends from different backgrounds, different personalities. Everything appears normal on the surface. People chatting, laughing, sipping drinks. Yet under this lively social environment lie ancient storylines we've inherited from countless generations. Beliefs about trust, danger, belonging, and exclusion. For instance, you might unconsciously treat a certain friend as a leader, simply because she embodies qualities resonant with the savior archetype. Another friend might be unconsciously cast in the trickster role because he's a jokester. These archetypal overlays can prevent us from seeing each other clearly, because we respond not just to who the person is, but also to an ancient symbol we sense within them. The result: confusion, misunderstandings, and missed opportunities for true closeness. One of the biggest hidden influences here is the fear-based inheritance many of us carry. Centuries of cultural conditioning teach us which types of relationships are acceptable and which are taboo. There might be ancestral trauma that has embedded a deep suspicion of outsiders, or a collective memory that you must keep your guard up to survive. Thus, we come to new connections with a subtle, unconscious stance of defense. You might ask yourself, why do I pull away from people who try to be emotionally supportive? Or, why do I get anxious the moment I sense real intimacy? Perhaps you're not just reacting to your immediate environment, but to a deeply layered script that says closeness can be dangerous. Recognizing these influences is an essential first step toward neutralizing them. Consider a relatable scenario. You join a virtual book club to widen your social circle. You notice yourself feeling strangely uneasy around a member who, on paper, shares many of your interests. Despite all common sense, you just can't shake the feeling of distrust. Later, you learn that your family history involves a mistrust of authority figures or know-it-alls, a bias passed down subconsciously. That book club member might remind you, at an unconscious level, of someone historically seen as a threat by your cultural or familial group. In such cases, your internal alarm is actually an ancient system, courtesy of the collective unconscious, trying to shield you from perceived danger. This reflex might protect you occasionally, but it also limits your capacity for genuine connection with someone who may not fit that old narrative at all. The aha moment arises when you realize you've been filtering social experiences through archaic lenses you never consciously chose. Another powerful factor is the interplay of archetypes in mass media. Our collective imagination is constantly being stirred by stories, whether from movies, news, or social platforms. If the collective unconscious is the soil, mass media is like a gardener scattering seeds of fear, or idealized love stories or archetypal villains that feed into our cultural psyche. We internalize these portrayals, which shape our assumptions about relationships. For example, the repeated trope of the wounded lover might perpetuate the belief that love always equals pain, so we unconsciously reenact self-sabotaging behaviors in our romantic pursuits. Or popular narratives about certain groups might cast them as perpetual outsiders, reinforcing subtle stereotypes we carry without question. If you're enjoying this exploration so far, consider giving this video a like. Every bit of support helps these ideas reach those who might benefit, and it encourages me to keep creating content that dives deep into Jungian insights and practical psychology. Let's look at an aha moment that often arises when we discuss the collective unconscious. The realization that you may have internalized an archetype or storyline that prevents true empathy. Picture yourself in a heated discussion with a colleague about a project's direction. Your colleague is insistent on a meticulous approach, while you'd prefer a more innovative path. Suddenly, you sense a surge of emotion, as if you're fighting not just your colleague's ideas but an ancient battle, maybe the tradition V's. Progress archetype, which is bigger than the two of you. If you can label that storyline, you might catch yourself thinking, wait, am I actually threatened by this person's perspective, or am I reliving an age-old conflict I've unconsciously inherited? The moment you ask that question, you create a space for genuine connection. You shift from reacting automatically to consciously choosing how to engage, thereby opening a pathway for mutual respect and creative collaboration. It's also crucial to consider the shadow side of the collective unconscious. Jung introduced the concept of the shadow as those aspects of ourselves, and by extension, society, we hide, repress, or deny. When we talk about the collective unconscious blocking real connection, we have to account for collective shadows, widely shared traits or impulses that no one wants to own. This can show up in large-scale prejudices or group tensions, but also in subtle day-to-day interactions. If a group, for instance, collectively demonizes vulnerability, You might feel pressure to hide your insecurities, jokes, or confusions. Everyone ends up putting on a confident front, forming a brittle sense of unity that lacks depth. True bond is sacrificed at the altar of social norms, which in this case is the group's shadow at work. Its refusal to acknowledge that genuine relationships require emotional openness. How can you tell when the collective unconscious is in control rather than your individual choice? Often, it surfaces as patterned reactions or gut feelings that don't align with your conscious values. Let's say you have a friend who confides in you about serious anxiety issues. Rationally, you want to be supportive, but a wave of discomfort makes you switch the topic or offer superficial reassurance instead of real empathy. On reflection, you might uncover a cultural narrative that regards mental health challenges as weakness, an idea you never consciously endorsed but still hold. This can be an aha revelation. You realize the gap between what you want to believe, I'm compassionate, I value mental well-being, and your unconscious programming shaped by an inherited stigma. We begin to see that understanding the collective unconscious is not about throwing up our hands in surrender. Rather, it's about shining a light on what was hidden. Once you identify the deeper source of your reactions, you can consciously shift your perspective. You can choose to say, I see what I'm doing. I sense I'm projecting an ancient fear onto this relationship. Let me pause, breathe, and try to meet this person as they are right now. This is the power of awareness. It dismantles illusions that keep us apart. Real-world example number 2. A 35-year-old parent might find themselves inexplicably strict with their teenager's choice of career path. They rationalize it as concern for their child's future, but deeper introspection reveals a generational fear of stepping outside traditional roles, an inherited family dynamic that says straying from the tried and true leads to disaster. This narrative could date back to grandparents who suffered after taking bold career risks. On the surface, it appears personal, but it's often part of a collective script that extends beyond the individual family, resonating with broader cultural messages about safety and belonging. Recognizing that you're reliving an ancient drama can liberate you to be present and supportive with your teenager's unique aspirations, forging a deeper bond based on authentic understanding rather than passed-down anxiety. Now, how do we turn this knowledge into practice and ensure we don't let unconscious influences hold us hostage? First, we need to develop the skill of noticing. This might involve mindfulness or journaling, where you track your emotional reactions and ask, is this response truly mine, or could it be part of a larger cultural or ancestral story? If you frequently have a knee-jerk negative response to certain people or ideas, that's a big clue. Investigate whether you've internalized a collective archetype. Maybe you inherited a story that says, those who challenge the status quo are troublemakers, so you automatically label anyone pushing boundaries as suspicious. Once you see that pattern, you can question its validity and open yourself to different perspectives. Second, consider exploring therapy or group dialogue. Jungian analysts work with symbols, dreams, and archetypal patterns to bring unconscious dynamics to light. But you don't need formal Jungian analysis to benefit. Any environment that encourages deep reflection, be it a supportive circle of friends or a mindfulness workshop, can help. Sharing stories in a safe space often reveals the universality of our experiences. We start to see how we're all influenced by common roots. That recognition in itself can create empathy and break down barriers. When you realize you're not alone in feeling a certain inexplicable reaction, you soften. You understand that others also carry hidden influences. This is the paradox of the collective unconscious. It can alienate us if we remain unaware, but once recognized, it can unite us in a profound sense of shared humanity. Third, practice conscious relating. The next time you sense yourself labeling someone, "Oh, he's just the know-it-all," or "she's so over-emotional." Pause and ask if you are projecting an archetype onto them. Try a small experiment. Have a conversation that is purely curious rather than judgmental. Ask open-ended questions to truly hear the other person's reality. You might discover that the know-it-all has deep insecurities and is overcompensating, or that the over-emotional person offers genuine warmth and empathy that might enrich your world. By stepping outside the script of preconceived archetypes, you invite real connection to unfold in the here and now. Here's a powerful metaphor to remember. If the collective unconscious is a deep ocean, our individual consciousness is a little boat floating on the surface. We can't see all that swims beneath us, but we can feel the currents. If we pretend those currents don't exist, we'll be forever pushed around without understanding why. But if we acknowledge them, we can learn to navigate effectively, charting a course that respects the power of the water without succumbing to it. This is the essence of working with the collective unconscious, not to conquer or eliminate it, but to sail with awareness. A third real-world example. You might find yourself drawn to certain symbols or communities for reasons you can't explain. Perhaps you're fascinated by ancient Egyptian mythology, or you're intrigued by Eastern spiritual traditions. This fascination might be more than personal preference. It could be the collective unconscious offering you a gateway to universal themes of resurrection, rebirth, or enlightenment. If you share this interest with others who resonate similarly, you might forge deep bonds that bypass small talk and go straight to meaningful conversation. Conversely, if you're dismissive of those callings, perhaps out of fear of judgment, you deny yourself potential rich connections with like-minded souls. Recognizing the collective dimension of our seemingly personal interests can expand our capacity for deep human relationships. Let's take a moment to integrate this. We've explored how the collective unconscious, with its archetypes and inherited scripts, can shape our relationships without our consent. We've seen how it influences everything from prejudice to parental guidance, from workplace dynamics to subtle gut reactions. With awareness, we have the power to challenge these ancient narratives. We can connect with people for who they truly are, not as stand-ins for old, inherited fears or fantasies. If you're finding value in these insights, feel free to share this video with someone who might need a fresh perspective. It's amazing how a simple share can spark an eye-opening conversation. Before we wrap up, let's talk about ways to apply this knowledge in a practical sense. One straightforward technique is dream journaling. Jung believed dreams are a portal to the collective unconscious. When you wake up, jot down any images or scenarios from your dreams, even if they make no logical sense. Over time, you may spot recurring symbols: a lion, a labyrinth, a maternal figure. Look these up in the context of archetypal meanings, but also reflect on personal significance. It's less about a single definitive interpretation, and more about noticing patterns that may be shaping your waking life. Another practice is to regularly engage in self-reflection questions. You might ask yourself, is my fear or resistance here truly about this person, or is it echoing a larger, inherited narrative? Am I labeling someone based on an unconscious bias? Even if you don't have a clear answer, simply asking invites conscious awareness. An aha realization often emerges spontaneously once you open that door. One final application involves relationship check-ins. If you're in a partnership or close friendship, schedule periodic discussions about underlying feelings that might be lurking below the surface. Ask each other, do we notice ourselves repeating any age-old story, like "I have to be the caretaker," or "you always play the rebel," and how does that limit real intimacy? Such conversations can unearth collective scripts passed down through family lines or cultural norms, enabling you both to decide which narratives to keep and which to release. Over time, you create a partnership that is more authentic, more conscious, and less dictated by hidden forces. Let's also introduce one last metaphor to tie it all together. The collective unconscious can be seen as a stage where age-old plays keep cycling through. Different actors come and go, but the scripts and props often remain the same. The moment we realize we're unconsciously cast in one of these ancient dramas, we can step off that stage and rewrite our lines. This is the core transformation possibility, to become co-authors of our relational stories rather than mere actors bound by archaic scripts. Now, as we move toward a close, let's summarize our insights in a concise way. We've learned that Jung's concept of the collective unconscious suggests we are all linked by inherited psychological patterns and archetypes. These hidden forces can block real connection when they impose age-old dramas or biases onto our present-day relationships. Recognizing these influences is crucial. By bringing them into consciousness, we free ourselves to connect more deeply and authentically. In practical terms, you can start by noticing recurring emotional triggers or seemingly irrational reactions. Practice self-awareness techniques like mindfulness, dream journaling, or open-hearted conversation to shed light on these hidden currents. Seek supportive communities or therapeutic spaces if you need deeper dives into your unconscious patterns. The more you unearth these collective scripts, the more agency you gain in your personal interactions. If you want to begin applying these ideas right away, try this small but powerful exercise. Next time you feel an inexplicable resistance or instant dislike towards someone, pause and ask yourself what internal storyline might be playing out. Could they be reminding you of a cultural trope, an archetypal figure, or a family dynamic? Just naming that possibility can shift the energy dramatically, opening a pathway toward understanding and empathy. I'd love for you to join this conversation. Leave a comment with your reflections. Have you noticed any hidden patterns or archetypes creeping into your relationships? By sharing your stories, we build a community that supports each other in this journey of becoming more conscious. And of course, subscribe if you haven't yet, so you'll stay connected to upcoming explorations of Jungian psychology, personal growth, and the deeper dimensions of the human experience. Thank you for taking this deep dive with me. We've examined how the collective unconscious can limit genuine bonds, but also how, once illuminated, it can become the very means by which we unite more profoundly. In a world that often feels fragmented, every insight into our shared psyche becomes a bridge, linking us through our common human heritage. I encourage you to walk away from this video with curiosity. Notice how ancient narratives show up in everyday life. Reflect on how you can rewrite those narratives to foster the connections you truly desire. Together, we can bring more awareness into our relationships, turning the collective unconscious from a hidden barrier into a wellspring of empathy and shared understanding. And that might just be the key to unlocking the real, soulful connections we all crave.